So we were talking about Paula Woodward talking silly in defense of John Ramsey, always been by John Ramsey's side. I mean, hey, maybe you should have married John Ramsey. Oh, we got on the call together to talk to people. I mean, shoot, since you always want to be around him, might as well. Anyways, I wasn't done with this video because there were some things that were said that I want to clarify a lot further. I want to take some of the arguments that Paula said and kind of work through them a little bit more and contextualize them to make more sense. So one of the first things that I had a concern about was when Paula talked about the DNA. And I'll let me find that part that she said that.
In which to test the remaining DNA. They have the only sample of DNA left. It's small enough that it will only stand up to one test. So why haven't they tested it? Are they going to test it? Are they stalling? Are they sitting on evidence? That's kind of what's been going on with Boulder Police for 25 years.
And what is your theory as to the why now?
I can't figure it out. I don't know. I don't know if it's that they don't want to solve it or what. If the DNA isn't any good, let's go ahead and run it, see if it does match up to somebody. And if not, then go back and look at people from the very beginning. And there were a lot with very difficult backgrounds that they need to look at again if the DNA isn't any good. But for heaven's sakes, run the DNA. You've had 5 years. Please do it. And contact the FBI. You need experts.
Take us back to the early stages of.
Don't take us back anywhere because you don't know what the heck you're talking about. So I had a little concern around this conversation of sort of potential waste of DNA evidence in the JonBenet Ramsey case. And I was trying to do a little research to try to understand a little bit more about why this may have been the case and why I have these concerns to kind of see if they were valid or not. So you have sort of this delicate balance between using cutting edge technology and sort of risking the destruction of the DNA, the last remaining evidence, is what we kind of talked about, alluded to before. And obviously for me, that was a high concern because we're talking about this is the last sample that we have. Why would I just throw it out there? Because like I said before, the weight of and the seriousness of this is that I didn't know if I didn't know it was this, drastic. This is the only DNA we have left of JonBenet. Like, we've held this for 30 years. If we get rid of this, it's done. Something that we've been working on for 30 years. I think it would be negligent and irresponsible for the Boulder Police Department at this time to move forward with a DNA method. And I'm trying to get back to my notes, but I think at this time it would be negligent for them to move forward with testing the DNA, knowing that this is all they have and that this DNA could be, it could turn up nothing. And, and I think and we would have nothing. So I was kind of walking through that, kind of like, hey, Paula said this, what's the thing about that? So she mentions having a minute amount of DNA. So Paula Woodward, along with various law enforcement, I guess, has acknowledged that the remaining DNA sample is extremely small. It's degraded, and this is the problem that makes it worse. Not only is the DNA sample small, extremely small, she called it, in her own words, minuscule. That means this is small. Paula, we don't have a lot of DNA left. This is all we have. And you want to move forward and just be like, God, we're not. So it's small, it's a little degraded, and it's possibly a mixture from multiple people. Now we can start to see a little bit more about about why there is hesitancy from the Boulder Police Department. If they've been conducting studies or conducting research and fact finding with different labs to understand, hey, if I give you this sample, what are you going to do with it? Does that mean that my sample is gone forever? And these people are like, well, yeah. They have CBI, their study that they ran, their DNA study and testing that they ran with CBI to where, hey, we have all the DNA in the world. We can test it. And then they held on to, and that was in, I think, 96. And then they said, you know what? We got to hold on to this. We can't be as careless. And so they waited until 2008 with Boulder technology to start testing stuff again, because touch DNA, so on and so forth. But if you understand, or you know, the DNA stuff, there was a lot of mixtures, inconclusive stuff. So just for your reference. Now, when I say the police have a right to be concerned, this is what I mean. You know, so we are kind of looking at one of the things that this is the I think the long johns, right? And so when we're kind of, you know, cutting and doing everything, and we're trying to figure out what we can use, and we come and you say, okay, we've tested, we don't see the Ramsey family involved in any of this. Okay, cool. We test again. The only thing that we don't see these certain Ramseys involved, but we do see, you know, some indications that Burke or Patsy may have been included, right? And then we go to number 3, where it's talking about another part of it. It says, okay, contains a mixture of at least 2 individuals, major component from JonBenet, minor component of a contributor. The minor contributor is low level, contains allelic dropout, and therefore is not suitable for a comparison, right? We don't even want to touch that. We're not even going to put that, because we have a lot of allelic dropout, right? So we're trying to maintain and make sure that, look, man, I don't even want to, there's certain reasons why I don't want to put anything out there to even be tested, because it might not be suitable for comparison, because we don't have a lot of DNA. And you act like you can't understand that. So we have to be cautious with, it's just like by nature, right? You're cautious because you're saying, well, how much DNA do we actually have? We don't know that. Sample here, partial DNA profile obtained, consistent with the victim. So moving on, I think to the next sample was the Barbie nightgown. In this case, Patsy and Burke cannot be excluded as possible contributors when it comes to touching on the, what is this, part A? 1017A, the exterior and interior bottom front of the nightgown. So Burke and Patsy cannot be excluded. It gets to another part of it. Burke and Patsy can't be included or excluded. Gets to another part. Burke and Patsy can't be included or excluded. Gets to another part. Burke alone can't be included or excluded. And so now we're testing the unknown male that has a portion on the long johns, cannot be excluded. And then on another portion, cannot be included or excluded. So a little shaky, you know, as we call it, like a little shaky. And then we come to something like this. Partial DNA contains a mixture of at least 2 individuals, including a major component of the victim and at least 1 additional minor contributor. Minor contributor is low level, contains allelic dropout, and therefore is not suitable for comparison. DNA profile obtained contains a mixture of at least 3 individuals, including the victim and 1 male contributor. Due to the complexity of this mixture, it was deemed unsuitable for any further comparison purposes. The DNA's, you see what I'm saying? So we have to be with what we do have. If I'm consulting, right? So if I'm consulting and I'm saying, okay, this is what we do have, this is what we are sure about, we might get some elements to where there's some dropout, but I'm a little concerned about taking this stuff out, touching on it a lot, moving it around. I just want to keep it where it's at until we get into a good place to where we can use it and say, okay, I feel comfortable now. If we're certain with the technology that it's not going to degrade anything I have, then I'd be happy to move forward. And so when we think a bit about this, it's widely believed by authorities and experts that there is only enough viable material left for one, maybe two more comprehensive tests. If those tests fail to produce a usable profile, then that evidence is gone forever. And that's my point. If we lose this, it's done. What else can we do? And then what are we going to hear from the Ramsey camp? Oh, well, you knew, you're the expert. And so that's why there's a lot of pushback against John from the Boulder Police Department, because there was all this criticism coming out at first of, oh, you know, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You guys need to do what we tell you. And they did. They're actually following what Mark Beckner said they should have followed a long time ago, basically. And what Ron Walker said. Don't listen to what they're saying. Do this. Just go right through what they're saying. They don't know what they're talking about. Just go this direction. Because listening to them, the investigation will be derailed. So Boulder Police Department has previously stated that they are hesitant to move forward with certain tests because the amount of DNA evidence available for analysis is extremely small and complex. The sample could, in whole or in part, be consumed by DNA testing. Why are they getting on stage at CrimeCon not telling people the position of the Boulder Police Department? You know what? Why don't you invite the Boulder Police? Instead of inviting John and letting John just ramble on about nothing, why don't you invite the Boulder Police Department so they can defend themselves and say, hey, look, this is why we're doing this. At least give them a chance. If they don't want to show up, then they don't want to show up. And they're probably not going to allow you to just ask them more information about an open cold case, obviously. But if they might give a statement and say, hey, look, we've been invited to CrimeCon, we're not going to come. But just in lieu of us coming, we're going to put out a statement or a report to clarify again, hey, look, we're just concerned about the degradation of this DNA. So we don't want to move to try to make any quick decisions when this could have lasting impacts. Not just for us now, but for people who are trying to solve this case years later. People would love for this case to be solved. I know some people say, oh, this case will never be solved, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not. But people are interested in trying to see this case solved, and I don't think that we should put ourselves in a position to where we screw ourselves over, and then all the rest of it is just asking people questions, and hopefully somebody comes forward or whatever. Supporters of testing, including Paula Woodward and John Ramsey, argue that technology has advanced significantly since the last major tests in 2008 and 2016. They believe that newer, more sensitive methods, specifically forensic genetic genealogy, could finally identify the unknown male one profile. They contend that waiting risks DNA degradation further, making it unusable regardless of technological advancement. So the risk is that a new test could be conducted using sort of this whole genome or next generation sequencing, or maybe similar, and it fails to identify a suspect, thereby destroying the evidence that might have been tested by a superior technology in another 5 to 10 years. So clearly, the Boulder Police Department is taking a cautious approach to avoid consuming the evidence until they find a more definitive, less destructive technology. Whereas people who are protesting, they're for testing, like Paula or John, they're arguing that the risk of doing so is higher. You're risking doing nothing. That's a risk. You're doing nothing. And that risk is higher than the actual risk of testing and losing everything. So just sitting and waiting and being cautious is actually a terrible thing in this case. You should go ahead and test it, because we might lose some stuff anyway. And they're saying, especially since they believe the current technology is sufficient enough. I did have some concerns. And so I had some further concerns that I was working through. Kind of wanting to know a little bit more, as Paula states, about the experience of these individuals. So I wanted to know more about that. And so in 96, the Boulder Police Department faced a lot of criticism for its lack of homicide experience, despite a statistically high clearance rate in the years prior. And so while the department had solved most of its recent crimes, particularly with homicide, people argued that the cases were typically straightforward. You had some domestic incidents, and these incidents did not prepare investigators for complex staged appearing crime scenes like the Ramsey home, right? And so just to hold right there, though, whatever was done in the Ramsey home was so complex that it goes beyond just a simple, this seems like somebody did this. We go find them. We're done with the case. Those cases were a little bit more straightforward. But in this case, it was complex because the person who did it was intentional about being misleading, right? They said one thing and did quite another. And that's what the police continued to pick up on. So when they said, this just looks like, just right offhand, it looks like you're trying to mislead me. A lot of the cops said that. Ron Walker said that from the FBI. A lot of the cops looking at the ransom note, they said it and they were like, the closer we look at this, and that's why they got suspicious, because they said, wait a minute, the closer we look at this, the more we look at this, the more we're concerned that, I don't know if this is really true. And so I'm gonna have to start collecting evidence on, this ransom note, because this doesn't make sense. And that was the initial concern. And for some reason, it doesn't make sense to John and Paula, because they get mad. Oh, you guys are only focusing on us. Yeah, because from what we can tell, we may have just only looked at domestic incidences and things of that nature, sure. But from what we can tell, just based on being cops doing good police work, what you're trying to show me looks radically different from what happened. And that's where I'm going off of. That's the intuition that I'm going off of. What you're showing me looks radically different. Now, Lou Smith fell for the bait of the staging and was like, oh, if this staging is true, or if not even staging, but if this is true, then yeah, this could have happened. Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Under those circumstances, under that scenario, yeah. But if the initial argument is stripped away that this is the base foundation, then we know that it didn't happen the way that I'm seeing it. This isn't true, which would make me look somewhere else different, because now I know somebody is trying to deceive me. They're actively trying to deceive me. They're actively trying to throw me off the trail. And so nothing I do and look at, I can believe. If you tell me something, I can't even trust you anymore, because I don't know if it's true. So the department's track record, between 1990 and 96, Boulder had roughly, 1 or 2 homicides per year. And so, the 13 to 15 solve rate was cited, and they were trying to defend themselves. But people who criticized them noted that a lot of these cases were open and shut, mostly, spousal relations that went wrong, that type of stuff, which is, requires little forensic depth or complex investigative strategy. I think Steve Thomas was a narcotics detective when he was assigned to the Ramsey case. I think he came from Atlanta, but his experience was primarily in narcotics, and he frequently criticized in retrospect for his lack of prior experience in homicide before he led the Ramsey case. So they're saying, "Oh, you're not even a homicide detective." I mean, sure, but I'm an investigator, so I apply the same principles of an investigator over here. People do that all the time. They take one set. Jobs actually look for that. They look for transferable skills. What transferable skills do you have? Maybe you don't have to be a homicide investigator specifically. That just means more experience, that you've seen certain things, but it doesn't mean that you're a bad detective. You just haven't been in this arena observing things in this arena. And what's to be expected is that you might make a few mistakes, but you'll catch up very quickly and overcome those mistakes. Tom Trujillo was a detective in the bureau at the time of the murder. While he had some experience in crime scene investigation, and he had worked on the 19th Street homicide and an infant death in 2002. At the time, though, he wasn't necessarily a specialist in homicide in 1996. And so he was on the case for 26 years. But Beckner took over as lead commander. Mark Beckner took over as lead commander of the case in October of 97, probably after a year after the case. And he was a veteran officer who eventually became police chief. But like the others, he didn't necessarily have a background in homicide. I think it was in patrol and administration rather than sort of like a lifelong specialized homicide unit. And to be fair, you don't have to be in a lifelong homicide unit to solve crimes like this. Like I said, you just need transferable skills. And so Beckner admitted that the department's initial response was mishandled due to understaffing and lack of experience with such high profile cases. And then you had Lou Smith, because of the internal recognition of their lack of experience. The district attorney's office eventually brought in Lou Smith. Unlike the BPD detectives, Smith was legendary for his homicide investigations from Colorado Springs, he had solved, I think, like 200 murders. Including, I think, the Heather Dawn Church case. And so this experience led him to favor the intruder theory, which caused significant friction with less experienced detectives who favored the family theory. So Mark Beckner kind of talked a little bit more about some of the mistakes that he thought about the case, sort of like looking back in hindsight. And he said when he was in 2015, I think it was, he was kind of like in a session like entitled Ask Me Anything. And so he said when he took over the case, some errors that he made on day one is that there was a failure to secure the crime scene. The house was not properly sealed. Friends and advocates were allowed to roam the house, clean up the kitchen, and potentially destroy evidence. And that's what Paula said. These guys are coming in there, they're cleaning the kitchen and they're doing things, they're touching stuff. And it's only happening because people think that you're actually a victim. And so Mark goes on to say, treating the Ramseys as victims, that was a problem. That should have never happened. We should have treated them as suspects. Because of the ransom note, officers initially treated the case as a kidnapping, where the parents were victims who needed support, rather than a homicide investigation where the parents are primarily their primary suspects until cleared. Right? We know the BPD had an ability to clear suspects. They weren't just hoarding, suspects. They were clearing them, getting them out of the way so they can move on to other things. And so if they would have, Mark Beckner is saying, if we would have acted earlier and treated them like we should have treated them, this would have been a completely different story. We wouldn't have treated it like a kidnapping. And a third thing that he says was they failed to separate the parents. He admits, Chief Beckner admits, it was a major error to not separate John and Patsy immediately and to get a independent statement from each. Instead, John and Patsy were left together, which allows potential suspects to align their stories. But this is the thing about it, though, that Beckner is missing. They try to isolate in a way. I don't think they formally requested isolation, but I think in a way they tried to isolate. They tried to talk to John alone, and John would just become squirmish and walk upstairs and get away. And they tried to talk to Patsy, but Patsy would just cry. And they tried to talk to Burke, and then Burke was hidden behind a wall of friends, and you're not supposed to talk to these people. And basically, everything that you said, don't mention it. And so I think a fourth thing that Beckner had a problem with was Linda Arndt instructed John Ramsey to search the house, which led to him finding JonBenet, in which contaminated the primary crime scene, which was the wine cellar and the body itself. So those things did need to happen. The department, I think that they met with as they were trying to get help on this case, which was, I think the FBI was the FBI's National Center for Analysis of Violent Crimes, or NCAVC. And I think specifically they went to the Behavioral Analysis Unit, also BAU, also known as BAU, in Quantico. In 1996, no local police department had a national reputation for staging analysis. So when we talk about who would have helped, who would have had better luck with this case, who should they, because it's easy to say you should have called someone and say, oh, you should have called someone. It was your mistake for not calling anybody. Who? If there was nobody who had a track record, of dealing with, or who were well renowned for staging crimes, who would we call? I mean, the FBI. If I call the FBI would be just as bad, because they don't have experience with staged crimes either. I mean, people are just not renowned for this thing. You have people who know some stuff about it, right? And the people who knew some stuff about it said that to look at you. And so I'm confused at this constant get help. And it was like, hey, do you know that they would have looked at you more, right? They were advocating to look at you more, right? So when they asked Patsy, if just to check your temperature, if this was somebody else, what should we do? Oh, lock them up. What if we found out it was you? That's a different story. In what way? We lock up who we lock up, right? So there weren't really a lot of people who were just kind of floating around who were experts on this stuff. But still, the Boulder Police Department brought in a lot of experts to try to help them interpret the information and move forward. I think the FBI, they had FBI profilers like John Douglas. Ironically, he was later hired by the Ramseys. John Douglas was a pioneer, I think, in distinguishing between a real intruder scene and one staged by someone close to the victim to cover up the crime scene. Now, when they went to Quantico, dealing with the FBI again, when they went to Quantico, BPD, Boulder Police Department detectives later went to Quantico to present the case files to the FBI's Child Abduction and Serial Killer Unit, CASKU. The FBI experts reportedly concluded that the scene did appear to be staged. Their advice was to keep going in that same direction. And basically, they were validating BPD's theory that the family was involved, which contradicted the intruder theory. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep on going that direction. That's what the police in another state said. That's what the FBI in another state said. You wanted the FBI, you got them. And they said, track them. FBI agent Ron Walker was the first federal agent on the scene, arriving on December 26th, and his experience clashed instantly with what the Boulder police had already done. What do I mean by that? When he showed up, he immediately told the Boulder Police Department to bag and tag the parents. That you can't get no more straight than that. Bag and tag them. Oh, but I gotta bag and tag them. Oh, but my leg, bag and tag them. Oh, but you don't understand my daughter. I'm a nice person. Bag and tag them. Because they knew somebody walked up in that house that wasn't playing. And so he said bag and tag the parents, meaning separate them, interview them at the station, and treat them as suspects. We're not even gonna play this game of, oh, well, maybe you look so hurt and you. I'm not even gonna put emotion into it. Separate them and take them to the station so where we could talk. John and Pat, that's why John and Patsy, that might be why, because if Ron was in the house saying bag and tag them and speaking to other people and saying separate them, then obviously the next behavioral thing for you would be to hire a lawyer pretty quickly. For you to say, I'm not doing that, and hire a lawyer pretty quickly and lawyer pretty fast, because I don't want anybody, I need to know what's going to allow me to not have to sit in front of these people and be bombarded with questions. Because I guarantee you, if their attorneys weren't there, it'd have been different. I guarantee you, if their attorneys were not there, we'd be having a different conversation. I guarantee that. Some of these things that you get to huffing and puffing and heaving and weaving about, oh, how dare you accuse me of this and that? They just sit there and look at you. I'm sorry you feel that way, but we need an answer. Oh, how can you say that I'm sorry you feel that way, but the evidence is the evidence. I'm not going to fight with you about this nonsense. The evidence is what the evidence is. So the best thing that you could do is go ahead and hire an attorney to kind of slide away from this before it gets a little too hot. Ron Walker felt the atmosphere in the house was contrived and unlike any kidnapping he had ever seen. He was frustrated because BPD command staff, specifically Commander Eller, wanted to keep the FBI at arm's length, fearing that the feds would take over their case. As a result, Walker's advice to lock down the scene and separate the parents was ignored. I tell you what, had the FBI taken over, John would have probably been in prison a long time ago. Because the FBI would have came through, that probably would have been the best thing. The FBI's blunders, the FBI probably saved John and Patsy. The FBI, small mistakes. You know, God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? For John and for Patsy. Maybe God thought that they suffered enough. Just losing a child is bad enough. But I'll tell you right now, probably had it been the FBI, oh, it'd have been a different story. They wouldn't have asked, and they had more resources. The FBI would have had more resources. Oh, it'd have been a different story altogether. So John should actually be thanking the blunders of the Boulder Police Department. He should actually be John every year should be sending gift bags and gift packages to instead of raising $1 million for the DNA testing, John should be raising millions of dollars to send the Boulder Police Department on an extravagant, lavish vacation to Hawaii every year as a thank you for blundering and getting these people off my butt, because I'd have been in trouble. Thank you for having a slow start and letting me roam all around the kitchen and walk out the kitchen and touch stuff and bring my daughter up and not say anything to me while I threw a cover over her face and contaminate the crime scene. Thank you. Because I made your job that much harder. And then you gave me the chance to later blame you and say it was your fault. That's what you allowed me to do. Man, all right. So when they got to the polygraph test, and Paula is like, oh, they took a polygraph and the police, they wrote it off. They still didn't want it. Yeah, because the Ramseys and their lawyers argued that because the FBI had been consulting, at least the FBI in Boulder had been consulting with the BPD, and they had already profiled the parents as likely suspects, then the FBI was not neutral and they feared the FBI examiner would use the test to trap them rather than clear them. But if the evidence ain't there for the parents, then what would you be afraid of? Oh, do you think now? Are you saying now? Are you insinuating now that the FBI might be in some way, shape, or form corrupt? Typically, they're following what they need to be following, doing what they're doing. But when it comes to you, they're corrupt. Seems a little bit biased to me. Oh, they can find everybody else guilty of whatever they want, but when you talk to me, not me. I remember a long time ago, probably 20 years ago when I was younger, the blatant silliness of people. Man, so I was dating this girl, and I had a friend, man, and he was hilarious. I mean, every time you see the guy, we're cracking jokes, good times, good vibes. It's funny. He's funny. He just picks out, even about you. You know, you might be dying laughing at whatever you said, and he picks out something, you know, that you're, man, what are you doing? And what's wrong with your teeth? I didn't say anything to you, but I saw your teeth were yellow when I came in here. And you know he's taking a direct shot at you, but it's so funny that you can't come up for air. You're just laughing. And I remember one time, so we're at her house, and I remember we're at her house, and he comes over with a friend of mine, with another friend of mine or two. He comes over, we're all in the living room just chilling, and he gets to going. And we are laughing, we are bent over, our stomachs are just, you know, we're going in, we're laughing. And she gets to laughing a little bit too hard. And you know, when you laugh so extravagantly, that's just like, either we can ignore this or we can address this. Like, all right, you're doing too much. And she was doing too much. She was doing too much. And so she's laughing. She's throwing her head back and patting her stomach and all such as that. True story. And he looks over at her and he says, because he was getting on my boy. He was telling us all the stuff, you know, that my homie had done throughout the day. They were hanging out all day. He was like, man, let me tell you what so-and-so did. And so we're laughing at it. It was like, man, this dude's stupid, man. And so we're laughing, and she's throwing her head back. We're done laughing. We're like, man, we're drying our eyes and man, we're wiping our eyes and stuff like that. It's like, man, that's crazy, man. You guys are dumb, man. And she's still going, doing all that, falling on the ground. And I knew, because I knew him. And I was like, man, you're doing too much. And I knew, I was like, yo, she's doing too much. And it just got so silent in the room because she's taking over. He looks at her and says, and what are you laughing at? And I can't remember what he said, but it hit instantly. It hit so hard. It reversed. It hit so hard. It reversed the course of what we were talking about. He said, and what you laughing at? And he just boom, boom, boom. And the dude that was kind of under, that was kind of under barrage at first. Now it was his turn to throw his head back and die laughing. I tried to be a good boyfriend, man. I really did. I tried to be a good boyfriend. I tried tried not to laugh so hard. But you know, sometimes when you're in the line of sight, you know, or you know, you're just in the mode, you just can't help it. You're already warmed up. So, man, I'm laughing and I'm doubled over, and like I said, I tried not to. I really did. And I knew it was going to be a problem when he said it. I knew it was going to be a problem. We're in her house, and the way she thought was, now, if it was in my house, I wouldn't care. You know, everybody gets it. I mean, you said something, everybody gets it. I don't need to leverage, you know, what I have over you. But she once he says it, she immediately stops laughing. And she said, what? And she said, wait, why are you talking about me? And we all were like, because you laughing at him. You doing too much and this and that. He was like, but why y'all laughing at me and this and that? Because you acting like you ain't got no skeletons in your closet. That's why we laughing at you. And here we go. You know, all of a sudden it's a problem. Here we go. Oh, you can't laugh at me because this and that. You gonna laugh at me at my house. Oh, that's what it's about. So you get a little advantage and because it's your house, all of a sudden can't nobody laugh at you. So we can laugh at everybody else, but can't nobody laugh at you. And I was like, man, that's mighty hypocritical. For you to for us to laugh at everybody and you don't have a problem. But when people start laughing at you, it's all fun and games, it's all jokes. But when people laugh at you, then it's a problem. Same way with the Ramseys. Oh, go to the FBI. But all of a sudden, we want the FBI. But when the FBI turns around and says, we're looking at you. Oh, well, we can't use the FBI. You know what? Don't use that FBI. Use my FBI. Literally. As dumb as that sounds, that's literally what John and Patsy did. And they expect us. Now, if that's what you do and you say, that's what I took. I'm working with my attorneys, fine. But to try to tell us and try to convince us that this is logical when everybody knows it's not is insulting. Obviously, defense attorneys generally advise clients never to take a police or FBI polygraph. In their view, if you fail, the police tell the world, and if you pass, they say the polygraphs aren't admissible in court and they ignore it. Right? So then just don't take it. Unless it works to your benefit. So the Ramseys eventually took the polygraph from a private private expert they hired on their own. And they went ahead and passed. And so they went to the police. They were like, oh, the police, see, we did a polygraph test and the police didn't want it. But there's more to the story, as you know. In April of 2000, John and Patsy Ramsey took their first polygraph test in Atlanta with Lynn Wood. And the test results came back. The examiner, Gerard Torriello, I believe, ruled the results inconclusive for both parents. If I remember correctly, the results were inconclusive. The explanation, I think, was that Torriello stated he could not explain why the results were inconclusive, but noted that bad liars get worse and the good get better upon retesting. Why would he say that? Bad liars get worse and the good get better. What would you possibly be referring to? Bad liars get worse and the good get better. Say, you don't happen to think that a little time and a little familiarity with something might change the odds, do you? Let me tell you something. Sometimes I look at the work of Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, and she talks about how especially with the brain, a lot of times, the more you learn, the more you see something, the less paralyzed you are by it because you've seen it, right? You've seen it before. I've seen it. And so obviously I more so know how to act previous times, right? So I can be a part of an experience, right? Maybe you're a part of a car wreck or something like that at first. And I remember my first, like when I first got my first car wreck, and I didn't have any insurance. I think I had some money saved up. Oh, because I got my income tax back. And I had some money saved up. I think I had about $2,000, but I didn't have any insurance. And so I'm driving around with no insurance. And we are I'm tailgating somebody, and it was a time of it's like a lot of construction in the area, and the highway, the lines on the freeway were the lanes were very narrow on the outside. You didn't have an outside lane, or I'm sorry, a lane. I can't remember what it's called. Shoulder. You didn't have a shoulder to get over on, because they had the construction blocks kind of blocking that. And I don't know why they did that. It used to be horrible, very frustrating. And so in the left lane, which is where we were traveling, you had 4 cars in the left lane, and I think I was the third car in the lane. And we were traveling, and there was an 18-wheeler in the right lane. And so look, again, there's not a lot of room. The lanes themselves were very slim. And so obviously from that, we're traveling, and the guy in front that we're all behind, I think he was scared to pass up the 18-wheeler and just go, because he thought the 18-wheeler would come over in his lane and he'd be stuck, rightfully so, looking back at it. And so I think he did try to go, but we came to a point in the road to where the 18-wheeler came out of his lane or something like that. And what ended up happening was, it was like we all just kind of ran into the back of each other. And because he slammed on his brakes, almost immediately, and trying not to get hit by the 18-wheeler. And so obviously the car behind him, boom. And then I was behind that car, boom. And I remember when it happened, I was so scared. My phone flew off of the, because I had never dealt with this before. My phone flies off of the center console, and things shift and stuff like that. And I remember I was just shaking. I was shaking, and I was like, because I was scared. I was like, man, what's going on? I've never been in this issue. I've never had this issue before. So I'm shaking. I'm scared. I'm terrified. Because I don't know how much money this is going to be. I was like, man, this is going to be like $10,000, man. I don't know what's going to happen, man. And so I get out because I didn't have insurance. So, and I forget why I didn't. Maybe my money was funny or something like that. But I'm looking for the phone, and the person gets out, and they're, kind of knocking on the window. Hey, would you come out? So we can I can get your insurance. Okay. So I'm reaching for my phone, and I'm trying to, trying to figure it out. I'm concerned. But then later on, you get in the wreck, and you're like, dang it, all right, everybody okay? Let's take a look. And because that first time you get out, you don't take pictures, you don't do anything. They had to tell me to take pictures. They had to tell me what to do. And because I'm shaking. They said, they pat me on my back, calm down, it's gonna be all right, blah blah, just call your insurance company. And they acted so calm. And it's like, man, I'm terrified. Man, how much am I gonna have to pay? And stuff like that. And I don't have that money, whatever. I'm already whatever. So the next time I get in a wreck or something like that, and I haven't gotten in a wreck in a long time, but the next time I get in a wreck, I'm getting out, I'm looking, taking pictures. It comes natural. I'm getting out, looking, taking pictures. Anybody okay? What do you think we should do? You think you're good? We can drive off right here, or we can let the insurance handle it. No problem. It's up to you. My car is fine. Okay, you good? All right. Sorry for the inconvenience. Get out and leave, right? Because that's the first time, right? And so you just move on from there. When you take the polygraph test, and the first time you don't know what it is, you're shaking, you're nervous, this, that, and the third. But the second time, you have about a month in between to come back to it. I don't like that you can continue to take the lie detector test as many times as you want until you pass. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That's the problem. Because now it's like, oh, just take it till I pass. And then, well, dang. What that just devalues the test altogether. If you're just going to take it again and just say, oh, look, I passed. Like, what? So They take the test again. I think they took it first in April, and then they come back and they take it a month later. Following the inconclusive result, the Ramsey's attorney Lynn Wood hires Ed Gelb, a former president of the American Polygraph Association, to conduct a second round test in May of 2000. And so Gelb announced that both parents were truthful and showed no deception. But the thing about this was, and we talked about this before, the questions were fairly straightforward. They were asked versions of, did you inflict any injuries that may have caused this? Do you know who did this? And so, my thing was, I mean, if you throw a fastball down the middle of the plate, and you tell me you're about to throw a fastball, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna hit it. Because I think those are the same questions that they asked in the first one. Maybe they modified a little bit, but it's the same questions that they ask again in the second one. I mean, well, dang. Because as you continue to look through this, your body is now used to and familiar with the questions, so you don't react so much emotionally the second time around, because you know what to expect. You're not as nervous. You know what's coming. You know what to expect. Yeah, I already know the questions. And so now I just, like Paula was doing, you sit up and you're ready to answer the question. You're actually excited to answer the question. So deception is not even on your mind. You don't have to think through things. Deception is not even on your mind. You just answer the questions. Right? And so now they get into this back and forth where they're now saying, well, take these results, and the FBI doesn't want to take them because it's like, I mean, you just took it twice. What does that mean for me? And Mark Beckner was like, that doesn't change anything about this case because that's nonsense. So kind of getting back to the behavioral unit and what they thought and the recommendations and how they advised the Ramseys to move forward, stuff like that. The FBI didn't necessarily release profiles of people that we were looking for. But some of the experts that analyzed the case and kind of provided some support for what, the BPD was doing and the fact that it was a staged crime scene. I think Greg McCrary, and we talked about Greg McCrary here, and then also Jim Clemente, identified several red flags that pointed away from the stranger. And this kind of backs up the BPD that pointed away from a stranger and toward the parents. They said that there was a low probability statistic. Quantico profilers noted that statistically, there is a 12-to-1 probability that a child who is unalived in her own home was probably, it was probably done by a family member or a caregiver. 12-to-1. That's what the FBI said. So they weren't just looking at you because they didn't like you. They were looking at you because of the statistics and what the statistics said. And the statistics said, unless proven otherwise, it's typically going to be you. And it makes sense. And you can't look anywhere else because all the evidence points internally. So it's like, look outside, look outside, look outside. Why? There's no reason to. The statistics tell me to look in here. And as I'm looking, I'm finding. Why would I stop that and then look outside of that? That doesn't make sense. Why would anybody do that? It's like, you guys never wanted to target anybody else in the first place. You guys only wanted to target us. According to the information, buddy, according to the evidence, why would we look anywhere else? 12-to-1, and then you had contradictory offender behavior. A stranger intruder's goal is typically to get in and get out as quickly as possible. The FBI found it highly unusual for an intruder to spend hours in the home, write the 3-page note, Find a blanket to wrap the body in and then wipe down the victim before leaving. You don't need to do that. Let it happen. If you made a mistake, let it happen and run. The fact that you went and got a towel and put it underwater and wiped her down, and you knew exactly where to wipe her down to create a distortion, is unusual. That does not make sense. And then you leave. And like I said, closing the door and putting boxes, closing the train room door and putting boxes in front of the train room door before you leave. Who would do that? There's no need. You're gone. Nobody's awake. You put boxes in front of the train room door and a bunch of stuff and close the door as if somebody's right on your trail. As if somebody just woke up and is sneaking, is about to watch you sneak out the window. There was nobody behind you. Why would you need to close the door and put boxes in front of it? Don't make sense. The ransom note, profilers concluded, was clearly staged, pointing to the 3 pages and the specific amount matching John's bonus, and the fact that it was written in pen and paper from inside the home as evidence that this was a red herring created to lead police away from the home. Exactly. And the FBI noted the absence of a typical forced entry or absence of typical forced entry signs, which supported the BPD's focus on those who had keys or who had access. Now, John Douglas, who was the famous founder of the profiling unit hired by the Ramseys, he said that he believed a disgruntled associate of John Ramsey was likely the person who did this and was acting out of personal vendetta. But on the other hand, people like Greg McCrary criticized Douglas for basing his profile on a 4.5-hour joint interview with the parents rather than separating them and then getting into a forensic interview. We keep on coming back to the same thing. That's a problem. The lack, and Mark Beckner said this, there is a lack of separating the parents and asking questions. Separate them and ask questions. You should have done that initially. Every time you get John and Patsy together, and John and Patsy don't want to do anything but do joint interviews. Everywhere they go, it's a joint interview. Get on television, joint interview. So y'all can regulate each other. And so the FBI team at Quantico essentially told the BPD that the crime didn't fit the behavior of this, deviant-minded predator or a kidnapper. Instead, Quantico said it fit the behavior of someone who loved the person, who loved this victim, who loved JonBenet, but was trying to cover up an accident or a spontaneous act by creating sort of this movie-like kidnapping narrative. And I'm going to leave it there. But I'll say this. I think it's getting to the point, for me at least, to where it's like, I don't think I can believe anything that you're talking about. If you're John, anybody in John's camp, and now Paula Woodward, just get out there and just say whatever. And it'd be like, Paula, what are you talking about? What you just said contradicted what you're telling me now. Why should I believe you? Anyways, heard enough, seen enough. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. And thanks for the hypes. Appreciate you. Much love to you. Big hug to you. And take care of yourself always. And till the next time, take it easy.